Today, we are going to talk about Denver, Colorado, which to me is a microcosm of the United States at large and the economy therein that is shrinking, dilapidating. And if you're like me, you're wondering every day when you're going to wake up and see total economic collapse. Today, we're going to talk about how Denver was just named the housing market that is losing the most value, how people are moving out of Colorado more than people are moving into Colorado, and what this means for the economy at large. So join us for another episode here on Radically Colorado as we unveil all of Colorado's secrets. Okay, so today we're going to talk about an article that has just come out, and it has been really at the center of conversation in the industry that I'm in real estate, but it applies really to everywhere. I know the narrative going into this year, going into last year, going into the year before, from realtors, from lenders, was this is going to be the year. This is going to be the year that interest rates go down. This is going to be the year that the economy kind of picks back up to COVID-like levels instead of being in stagflation, in an economy that's burdened by inflation and growing prices, and an economy that is not allowing the common, everyday American to make enough. So I wanted to pull the veil back regionally here. I'm in Colorado, but if you're not in Colorado, comment below on if this is mirroring the economy in your metro area. I'm just super curious because I tend to think that this is a macro level economic regression as compared to something micro level that's just happening here in Denver, but prove me wrong. So I'm going to open up the MLS right now. MLS is the multiple listing service that's where we list properties as a real estate agent. And it's actually a little bit crazy to me. If you look at our data, there's something that predominates all other things as far as real estate home sales. And I'm looking at existent home sales right now. And every week you start to see this saga of price decreases. This week, in the past 7 days, for example, there's only been 1,473 homes that have closed. And what that means is people are still purchasing, selling, and buying real estate. But the market is trying to figure out pricing because a larger number than that is price decreases, 1,898 price decreases in the Denver metro. And that exceeds the number of sales in the Denver metro, which starts to kind of paint a picture. So let's pull up this article. Let's go over this. Realtor.com, of course, is really well known for clickbait type articles, and there's nothing that sells like fear, but I really want to unpack this article and see if there's any validity to it, see if this is a Denver regional issue or if Denver is just a highlighted example of something that's happening nationwide. Then my question is, will that something continue to happen over time, both in our metro and nationwide? So right now what we're having nationwide is price slippage on assets. Generally, the stock market's been doing pretty good. Assets have not been doing so good. And securities since the Iran conflict have been something that people have been flying into for safety. What's really interesting here is generally, as we go into an economic downturn, asset prices perform relatively well. I think the difference here is the borrowing capacity on an asset is greatly hampered by the high interest rates, which, newsflash, didn't go anywhere in 2026. I remember sitting down with people at the beginning, and they said that they sat with a number of real estate agents, and those real estate agents said that interest rates were certainly going to go down in 2026. Of course, they said the same thing in 25 and 24, but it didn't happen. And that's because the interest rate equation is a multifaceted equation that is not as simple as economic policy in a world where all policy impacts the economy. In other words, we ventured into a global economy, and if you introduce new factors that were unexpected in people's economic analysis as they were going into this year, then it can change the whole equation. What's that new factor? Well, global conflict. I'm not going to get political here. That's not the goal of this. But I will say that I don't think it was projected by many economic analysts that we would be going towards global conflict, particularly in the Middle East. So when that escalated, that sent ripples into the market and sent interest rates back up. It did look like the people that said interest rates were going down in 2026 were going to be right, and then the Iran conflict came and changed everything. So now I look at this article on Realtor.com. Denver surpasses Tampa as market with fastest falling home values. That's not good. So if we look at 2008, there was a lot of indicator places that was going to happen. And a lot of those were sand states and people that Californians moved to, and people from the East Coast moved to. So cheaper feeder areas like Florida and Arizona, Las Vegas. And the argument that Denver really boomed happened because Denver was affordable. Denver was centrally located somewhere that is beautiful. There's a big airport. There's enough education. So Denver was this kind of Goldilocks zone for investment and for people to move to, especially if you smoked Colorado's unofficial state herb, which was a contributor. There was all these economic booms and contributors, the green boom with cannabis, and the defense contractors came here in mass as well. We had the technology boom. We had a boom that happens to the whole economy at large during COVID, which added up to a really successful formula for Denver to attract people. But the problem is it attracted a lot of people. And when you attract a lot of people and it's affordable and a lot of people decide to buy anything, the demand that comes just exceeds the supply so fast. And that's exactly what happened in the Denver metro area. Builders could not keep up. We have an extreme lack of inventory. Those builders ramp up just as demand starts to fall. So if we look at a lot of these factors that are mentioned in this article, we're kind of the perfect place, the perfect example here. So more than half of U.S. metropolitan markets posted year-over-year price declines in February, signaling that the housing slowdown has broadened well beyond its Sunbelt origins. So, those places that I was just talking about. And it's particularly shocking because weakness is now spreading into maybe some regions that are concerning that this could be something that's nationwide. Particularly Seattle loses 2% in value. Portland's lost almost 1%. And there are markets that appear to be gaining value. Chicago, surprisingly, New York, for all those Mamdani haters, went up in value somehow, and Cleveland. But I think what we're seeing there is these weren't those hot cities during the pandemic. They weren't the places that everyone was moving to. Those places were places like Denver, Colorado. So we have the perfect storm here. I want to talk about another article here. Let's bring it up, which is Colorado. This is on CPR News. Colorado's slowing growth could be a symptom of its own success. This really ties to me into Colorado's shrinking values, and is this something that will be long-term? So the one thing that really contributed to our values growing, like I was saying, was population growth. Colorado's population growth saw a notable uptick in 2013, with the difference in the number of people coming and going hit 45,000 in that year. So that means that there were 45,000 people a year that were moving here in 2013, then were leaving. In 2015, that number was 68,844. So a lot of people are coming to Colorado at that time. Keep in mind, that is when marijuana goes recreational. And what happened to home prices between, let's say, 2011, when we're recovering from the Great Recession, maybe even recovered, you could argue, and now, prices have quadrupled. Literally, statistically, prices have 4x'd in a decade and a half, which is just, it's too big of growth to happen in too short a period of time. So that's one factor here in Denver. Another factor that I talk about a lot, the CPR article brings up, is apartment rents. There was a building surge in Denver. We've reached out to a lot of homeowners and asked, have you considered renting instead of selling? If your next goal is buying, you could offset the debt. Just getting creative here, because the idea is it's harder to sell if you've bought in the past 3 years, because that rent price is better than your mortgage price with where interest rates are. And that is capitalized in a Denver market where thousands and thousands of doors have been finished in the past 2 years. And these were the projects that were started during COVID. They've come to completion. You can see all sorts of buildings like this in Reno, really in every part of the city, these mid-rise, Class A, amenity-based apartments that are marketed at under $2,000 a month, and they compete directly with the home that you're going to try to rent out, be it a condo, a single family, or a townhouse. So there's more supply that's added to the rental side, and of course there's going to be more supply that's added to the purchase side, because builders finish at the same time as well. So all this building that's happening during low interest rates, that stuff, from permit to closing with that particular buyer, that can take years. So a lot of that is coming into fruition now. That all leads to, excess supply entering the market and downward pressure then put on price. And that is exactly what we've seen here in Denver with the introduction of new inventory that's competing against that inventory that you own. We have seen a complete reversal in people moving here, which brings me to my next article and last article that I want to talk about today, which came out in January, which is that more people are now leaving Colorado than moving here from other states. So remember when I said, we had a surplus of 45 to 60,000 people moving here from 2011 to 2015. Let's just look at some of this more recent data. Denver area saw a 69.6% decline in net migration relative to 2015, some of those heightened years. And I've even looked at some data that there is a complete negative net migration to this area. While domestic migration is negative, there are now 15,356 more international migrants to Denver. So this is still making our city net positive, but it's that number, and then there's more babies that are being born than people that are passing. But if we're looking at like net migration from people that are not international, then that number is like a little bit more staggering, I would say. Let's find that. We found another article here. So Colorado's population growth is slowest since 1989. This is from CPR. This article is saying that there's actually, this is crazy, 12,000 more people leaving here than coming here that live in the United States already. That was only helped by international people moving here, which that could change with the current administration. And also more people being born here than were passing away here. And that all together led to only a 0.4% growth rate in the Denver metro. So this is a huge, huge reason that this area is not growing as fast. So I get asked the question all the time, what should I do? Is this a good environment to do anything economically speaking in? Is anybody doing anything in this environment? And from a real estate perspective, like I just told you about the 1,400 sales that happened last week, that's going to put our sales number statistically a little bit higher than last year. Other more successful sales are happening in the Denver area. What we need to be looking at is that year over year price that has dropped by 2.4%. How serious is that for you? And I would say that really depends on where you are geographically speaking, and it depends on the deal that you got on your home. A lot of homes that we're seeing contribute to this price drop are because we're comparing it to data when people bought much, much too high, and they're coming on market too high because of that. Generally, that's when interest rates just went up, 2022. If you bought in this time period and you're in a slow growth economic area, then you're not going to have enough equity to sell. If you like what we're doing, make sure to subscribe to us, because we are going to do a whole special on short sales in our next episode, because we've been seeing a lot of them. Getting back to you, we've been seeing a lot of them in new build areas with a lot of competition. Like I said, a lot of times new builders came into completion, the ones that were excited about building during COVID, those homes completed recently. That adds a bunch of competition, especially if you bought a house there in 2022, and you're competing against their prices and you're competing against their incentive rate. So the more new growth there is around you, likely the less growth price-wise there is, because there's more competition. If you bought into an established area and you got a good price, you probably still built some equity and you're in a good position to sell still. Now, that is situational. If you're curious on which camp you fall into and you need an expert analysis, that is something that we would love to do for you for free. Next thing that I want to talk to you about is who is buying and selling right now. Generally, if there is a need, if your family is growing, if you can't afford your payment anymore, if you need to move out of state or relocate because of a job, if you have to downsize, think of the have to camp. And there is always a lot of people in that camp. So it is possible to sell, but you want to sell with today's data, not a year ago's data. You want to sell and match successful strategies, and generally the numbers will tell you exactly how to do that. If you're interested in what that number is for you, we will tell you honestly, because we have pivoted a lot of our business to tell people maybe now is not the time to sell, you should consider renting, and we do property management. This keeps us honest in an economy that is volatile and in an industry with real estate agents that will just tell you whatever you want to hear. You don't want to deal with that. So that's my honest answer. Is it a good time to buy and sell? Depends on what your needs are. From a buying perspective, it's always a good time to buy the dip. It's always a good time to buy in a downturn. Just be prepared for there could be some more price slippage, but if you're holding that asset for more than 5 years, people that bought in 2010 and held in 2015 were very happy. I'm definitely not saying that we're in a 2008 scenario at all, but I am saying any downturn is a good opportunity to buy if you can afford the asset, if the asset cash flows, if it makes sense for your life right now, that monthly payment, and you want to buy at a time where you have less competition and you have all the control of the market. You're certainly not going to have that when people come back and buy and values are appreciating. Buyers have control of the market when values are declining. Sellers have control of the market when values are appreciating. And the greater the appreciation or the greater the decline, the greater the power. So keep that in mind. There is opportunity in times that are seemingly bleak. And there's a lot of uncertainty right now. I'm more the person, and the reason that I've started doing this is I feel like there's a lot of dishonesty. A lot of people pretend to know things that they, quite frankly, they don't know. And that's why we've had realtors saying for the past 3 years that rates are going to go down, and they're lying to people. I think that we're now in an era where you can't lie to people. We have access to too much data. And the more honest you are, the more approachable you are, the more successful you are at communicating your message to the general public. That for me is the most important thing to really help here. Maybe it's not the right time for you to do anything, and I want to be the person that tells people that. I want to be the person that gives you honest news. So if you're liking what you're seeing here, make sure to like and subscribe for way more.